Chapter 7. The die was cast, a great decision based on the most honorable and powerful motives. The welfare of France had just been made. Napoleon was crossing the Rubicon. His was not to conquer or die, but to conquer for the motherland or see her torn by anarchy. Such was the alternative offered by his position, and his goal was to free her. The errors of the king's government were hastening its execution. As soon as the emperor had boarded the brig, the flotilla set sail, with the moon shining and emphasizing the outline of the island and the Porto Ferrejo forts. We soon lost sight of it. The emperor remained on deck until 11 p.m. When they started clearing the brig's deck, His Majesty went down to the cabin and went to bed in one of the small camp beds that had been prepared for him. Count Bertrand slept on a mattress on the floor in the emperor's cabin. I spent the night fully dressed on a mattress placed across that door. Early the next day, the 27th, the emperor went up on deck, had all the people accompanying him line up in 2 rows, and had their names taken down. Some clutter still existed, and a few useless items that couldn't be stowed were thrown overboard, and order was established on the ship. Around 10 a.m., a British corvette was spotted sailing in our direction. His Majesty ordered the guard to man the guns along with the sailors. He positioned the men needed for each piece and had them go through the exercise. The grenadiers were eager to fight and board the other ship, but the corvette entered into Porto Ferrejo. His Majesty said, "Campbell will be disconcerted when the commander of that corvette tells him I have left the island of Elba." The news of Napoleon's departure for France was therefore known after dinner on the 27th in Livorno. On that night in Florence, at the residence of Lord Burghersh, the news must have reached Vienna on Saturday, March 4th. It is therefore not surprising that Talleyrand succeeded in obtaining on March 13th that Napoleon be outlawed by all nations. It has since been learned that the proclamation by the powers was ready on March 9th. A few plenipotentiaries and Emperor Alexander himself thought that they were being overly hasty, but letters arrived from Turin on the 8th telling of the landing in Cannes, and others from France announced that in order to stop the disturbance caused by Napoleon, they had an army headed for Naples, which Talleyrand put at 80,000 men, divided between Grenoble and Dole, and the other troops that were gathering in Lyon. There was no doubt that Napoleon would be tracked down, cut off, or captured. Hence, they obtained Russia's consent to the declaration of March 13th. After the British corvette had appeared, the emperor ordered the flotilla to head for the island of Capraia, which was within sight. Around 11 a.m. on the 27th, we spotted a brig sailing out of Saint Florent and below Cape Corse, heading for Livorno, and toward us. The emperor ordered a close eye kept upon it. Soon afterwards, he was informed it was a merchant brig. But as it grew nearer, we realized we had been mistaken, and it was indeed a combat brig. As it continued toward us, the emperor had everyone not needed on duty go below deck. He remained on duty bridge and gave orders that all be positioned in case of attack, but the brig changed heading and disappeared. In the afternoon, we spotted the 2 frigates of the Corsican station and continued on our course without their bothering us. Shortly before sundown, the flotilla encountered Captain Andrieux. The flag of Elba was raised, and the corvette passed within hailing distance. When it was close enough, the emperor told Captain Tayada, the former brig commander, who knew Captain Andrieux, to offer to talk with him. The latter responded to the inquiry made of him through a megaphone that he was on a mission to Livorno, where he had to be that same evening. All he asked was, "How is he?" "Fine," came the answer. "Have a safe journey," he said as he moved away. When that ship came close, the emperor had ordered the grenadiers and chasseurs to remove their bearskins. The emperor dined on deck, surrounded by the civilian and military officers who shared his rations. After dinner, sitting on the bridge bench with Count Bertrand, General Drouot was bedded down, seasick. The emperor told the officers of all ranks surrounding him about some of the difficult times in his life. He talked of French army campaigns, their victories, the spirit moving the soldiers, the love of glory and the motherland. He said to them, "There is nothing you cannot get the French to do through their taste for danger. It is their Gallic heritage. The love of glory and courage are in the French an instinct, a sort of sixth sense. Many times in the heat of battle, I have seen our young conscripts jump into the fray. Honor and courage came out of their very pores. He then listed the qualities necessary to make a good officer and observed how difficult it was to train him. Nature had to have roughed him out first and given him coolness under fire, giving him mastery of himself and his decisions, a quick eye, and determination. He told them what had been said of his fatalism. Few men have had greater influence on the masses than I have, but it would be stupidity to have me say that all is written on high and that were a precipice placed in my path, I wouldn't have to alter my course not to fall in. My belief is that of any reasonable being, that in war, where danger is equal almost everywhere, where you must not leave a place known to be dangerous to go and stand where death can also reach us, and we must resign ourselves to our fate. Once you have that thought well in mind, you become master of your courage and composure, which is communicated to the men under you. The most cowardly among them will then pride himself on courage. He stated that conscription was a national institution and already had become part of our customs. The time will come when a girl will want no part of a man who has not paid his debt to the motherland. That institution will be at its peak when it is no longer considered a duty, but a point of honor, envied by all. Then will the nation be great, glorious, and strong. As grenadiers, 3 or 4 ranks back, listened with admiration to the words flowing out of the emperor's mouth. He said this, capable of setting afire their bubbling courage at the time of such a perilous venture, that his army of Italy might be duplicated, but certainly never surpassed, and that with his guard built into the core of 40,000 men, he would be sure of crossing all Europe. He then went on to portraits of some of his marshals. Next, he told how, after he had been brought to the throne by the unanimous wish of the nation, treason had caused his downfall, and how Marmont, whom he had every right to count on, and had sent to Paris to negotiate on his behalf, had gone there only to ruin his affairs. He said that the majority of people and parties were more faithful than was believed to the sentiments of national honor, glory, and independence, and that the nation could never have enough guarantees against the Bourbons and the feudal lords. The Constitution of 1793, which left executive power in the hands of the Bourbons, did not provide the people with enough of a guarantee. Suppose the men of the League had recognized Henry IV as a Protestant. Think of the charters, the constitutions, the guarantees they would have demanded in order to reassure their consciences and ensure their faith. They would never have felt they had enough. This is the same, no matter what they say or do. Wolves can never gain the trust and faith of the sheep. He then talked of the duties of the good general, who must never neglect any kind of foresight and must always be sure that his forces are so situated that they can face anything. There is not one of my generals whose depth I do not know. Some have it up to the belt, pointing to his own, some up to the shoulders, but those who have even more are few. There was in that scene, flooded by moonlight, something reminiscent of Plutarch's great men. What a school to learn about war, the officers were saying. They would have spent the night listening. At 11 p.m., the emperor retired to his cabin. On February 25th, the Guard's proclamation to the army and that to the French people had been dictated. Perhaps because of the emperor deemed it appropriate to make certain changes. On the morning of the 27th, in sight of the Gulf Juan, he dictated in his captain the 2 proclamations as they appear below. He dictated in a fiery fashion. His entire soul was painted on his face. When speaking of the motherland, of the misfortunes of France, he was electrified. Genius was at work. Tu ecce Deus. I have seen the emperor on many occasions. I never saw him look as superb. Proclamation of His Majesty the Emperor to the French people. Gulf Juan, March 1st, 1815. Napoleon, Emperor of France, by the grace of God, and the state constitution. Frenchmen. The defection of the Duke of Castiglione, Augereau, delivered a defenseless Lyon to our enemies. The army I had entrusted to his command was, by the number of its battalions and the bravery of patriotism of its troops, in a position to defeat the Austrian corps facing it, and to descend on the rear the enemy army had threatened Paris. The victories at Champs-Beauport, Montreal, Château-Thierry, Vauchamp, Mormont, Montereau, Crayon, Reims, Arcis-d'Aube, Saint-Denis, the insurrection of the courageous peasants in Lorraine, Champagne, Alsace, Franche-Comté, and Burgundy, and the position I had assumed in the rear of the enemy army, cutting it off from its stores, its reserves, its convoys, and all its transport, had placed it in a desperate situation. Never were the French near to be more powerful, and the elite of the enemy army was lost without its resources. It would have found its grave in these vast lands it had ravaged without pity. When the treason of the Duke of Ragusa Marmont surrendered the capital and disorganized the army, the unexpected behavior of these two generals, who betrayed at once their motherland, their prince, and their benefactor, changed the destiny of the war. The disastrous position of the enemy was such that at the end of the engagement that took place before Paris, it was left without ammunition because of its separation from its stores. In the midst of these new and grave circumstances, my heart was torn, but my soul remained unshakable. I considered only the interests of the nation. I went into exile on a rock in the middle of the sea. My life was and should again be of use to you. I did not allow the great number of citizens who wished to accompany me to share my fate. I believed their presence would be of use to France, and I took with me only a handful of brave men necessary for my own protection. Elevated to the throne by your choice, all that was done without you is illegitimate. For 25 years, France has had new interests, new institutions, a new glory, all of which can only be guaranteed by a national government and a dynasty born of these new circumstances. A prince who would reign over you, seated on my throne thanks to the same armies who ravaged our land, would vainly seek to bolster his position with the principles of feudal rights. He could ensure the honor and the rights of only a small number of individuals, enemies of the people, who have over the past 25 years condemned them in all our national assemblies. Your domestic tranquility and your consideration abroad would be lost forever. Frenchmen, in my exile, I have heard your complaints and your wishes. You call for this government of your choice, which is the only legitimate one. You reproached me, my long slumber. You accused me of sacrificing the greater interests of the motherland to my own rest. I have crossed the seas amid all kinds of perils. I have arrived among you to reclaim my rights, which are yours. All that individuals have done, written, or said since the fall of Paris, I shall take no notice of. It shall in no way influence the memory I retain of the important services they have rendered, for there are events of such a nature as to stand above human arrangements. Frenchmen, there is no nation, no matter how small, that has not had the right to escape the dishonor of obeying a prince imposed by a temporarily victorious enemy. When Charles VII returned to Paris and overthrew the ephemeral throne of Henry VI, he admitted owing his throne to the valiance of his soldiers and not to a prince regent of England. It is likewise to you alone and to the brave men of the army that I pay homage of my duty and shall always do so. Signed, Napoleon.